have finally found out what happened to Natalee Holloway 18 years after she went missing in Aruba, something her family says they have wished for. The family of Natalee Holloway has been in unbearable mental pain for 20 years since her death. The main suspect didn't say what he was accused of until years later, after years of silence and rejection. Even though telling the truth is comforting, it's still not enough to get Natalee back. She was a loved daughter and a good friend. The worst thing that could happen is finding out how your child was brutally killed. Let's look into Natalee's case one more time now that everything is clear. Finally, some justice. You may know Natalee Holloway's face if you lived in the early 2000s. Every news station showed her smile, and her name was in every story. In May 2005, she was 18 years old and had just graduated from high school in Alabama. She was on a trip to Aruba with her friends to celebrate. What began as a sunny vacation quickly turned into a terrible nightmare. One that her family would never forget and that would keep people interested for 20 years. No one knew for sure what happened for years. There were a lot of rumors, suspects, leads that led nowhere, and TV specials. Everybody had an idea. The case seemed to be stuck in the past, like a sad question mark that wouldn't go away. One person, Joanne Vanderloot, was at the center of that riddle. He was the last person seen with Natalee, so he was quickly thought to be the killer. But since there wasn't a body or any other solid proof, nothing stuck. In 2023, all of a sudden, things were different. In a quiet courtroom in Birmingham, Alabama, the truth finally came out. It seemed to come out of nowhere. It was even darker than most people thought it would be. As part of a deal to plead guilty to separate extortion charges, Euron finally admitted that he not only knew what happened but also killed her. He said in his statement that he tried to sexually approach Natalee on the beach. He killed her with a cinder block after she turned him down, and then he pushed her body into the water. That's it. There was no riddle or drama, there was only the truth. The moment was both strange and sad for Natalee's mom, Beth Holloway. She had spent 18 years trying to find answers and following up on leads that didn't lead anywhere, hoping for a breakthrough. He had been torturing her for years, so this was the last word. It wasn't from the law in Aruba or any new proof. She said, "It's over. Joanne Vanderloot is no longer thought to be guilty. He killed the person." Her voice was strong, but you could still hear the pain in it. It's hard to close things. It can bring peace sometimes. It can sometimes make burns worse. He was in court in Alabama for no reason at all. Now here's the crazy part. It wasn't because Olivia was killed. Because in 2010, Joanne tried to get $250,000 from Beth Holloway by saying she would tell Beth where Natalee's body was if she got the money. He lied to her after she gave him a down payment. That was the last thing that got him transferred from Peru, where he was already serving a 28-year sentence for killing Stephanie Flores in 2010. He didn't just stop with Natalee, it turns out. What they said. From the very beginning, Vanderloot was a key figure in the puzzle of Holloway's disappearance. He was the last person who was seen with Natalee on the night of May 30, 2005, when the 18-year-old Alabama high school graduate went missing while on vacation in Aruba. Almost right away, he started to change what he told the cops. He said at first that he and two friends had dropped Natalee off at her hotel. After that, he changed his story and said he had left her on the beach. People were angry and suspicious because his stories didn't add up. But even after many searches and questions, no clear proof came up. Over the next few years, Vanderloot kept getting into the public eye by telling shocking stories about what happened that night that could not be proven. In 2008, Dutch crime writer Peter R. de Vries secretly recorded Vanderloot saying what he seemed to be admitting, that he was there when Natalee died and threw away her body. But when asked about it, he said the tape was made up and that he had told the lie to get the trust of a supposed drug dealer. It started to look like this. Vanderloot would say he confessed, but then he would take them back, saying they were lies meant to trick, mislead, or get media notice. His intentions became more and more questionable. Vanderloot tried to blackmail Natalee's mother, Beth Holloway, in 2010 by offering to tell her where Natalee's body was found in exchange for money. He led her lawyer to a house that turned out to be a false tip after getting part of the payment. In the U.S., Vanderloot was finally charged with extortion and wire fraud for this act. This made him look even more like a manipulative person who was ready to use a mother's grief as a commodity. In 2023, almost 20 years after Holloway went missing, things took a big turn when Vanderloot, who was being extradited to the U.S. to face charges, gave a confession that police said was believable and full of details. In his remarks, he said that he had tried to sexually attack Natalee, but she fought him off. He then got violent, hitting her in the head with a cinder block and then throwing her body away. Unlike his other confessions, this one was part of an official plea deal, which means it is legally binding and can be used against him. It was the first time Vanderloot told a story with enough supporting details for the police to believe it was true. This last confession not only proved what many people had thought for years, but it also made Vanderloot's manipulative tendencies very clear. He had been playing with the truth for almost 20 years, leading a family that was hurting through a maze of lies. His confession, which was cold, emotionless, and lacking in remorse, showed that he was a deeply troubled person whose need for control and attention often got in the way of his readiness to tell the truth. It wasn't just that they were guilty. After a long campaign of psychological warfare, it was the end. When Joanne Vanderloot admitted to killing Natalee Holloway, it wasn't really a moment of justice. Instead, it was a bitter proof. Even though it ends a chapter, it doesn't bring much comfort because it shows how long he lied and how much pain he caused during that time. It's not just a crime story. It's about how the truth can be twisted, how uncertainty can be used as a weapon, and how a killer's guilt is finally found after being buried under layers of lies. It took a long time before they got to the suspect's statement. Did you know that besides Joran, there were other names involved? The Aruban government nabbed Nick John and Abraham Jones, two former security. Aruban law says that police can arrest someone if they have a strong suspicion, but they have to keep showing more evidence to support their detention during court reviews. After the fact, Deputy Police Chief Gerald Dumpig said that these three people had been the main target of the investigation from the start. Within 3 days of Holloway going missing, police started spying on her, tapping her phones, and reading her emails. Donig did say, though, that Holloway's family's demands made the police act faster than planned and arrest the suspects before they could get more proof. David Cruz, who works for the Aruban Minister of Justice, said that Natalee was dead and that the police knew where her body was on June 11. He was wrong. He later took back what he said, saying he had been wrong. That same night, Dumpig told the Associated Press that one of the suspects had admitted that Natalee had been hurt after they took her to the beach and that police were being led to the scene. The next day, people from the prosecution neither confirmed nor denied this report. They only said that the investigation had reached a very important point. The sixth person, local DJ Steve Gregory Crows, was arrested on June 17 after being linked to one of the first suspects. After that, on June 22, Pauwels Vanderloot, Joran's father, was held and briefly arrested so that he could be questioned. On June 26, both Crows and Pace came out. At different times during this period, the suspects' stories changed. In the end, all three said that Michael and Joseph Kalpoe dropped off Joanne and Natalee at the beach near the Marriott Hotel and left them there. At first, Joran said he left Natalee on the beach safe and sound. Satish Kalpoe's lawyer says that Joran later called Deepak and texted him 40 minutes later to let him know he was on his way home. In a different version of events, Joran said that the Kalpoe brothers dropped him off at his house and then drove off with Natalee. The cops later didn't believe this story. Domig didn't like this third account. He said that Joran might have changed his story to put the blame on the Kalpoe brothers after they started blaming him. He said that the suspects fought with each other during court sessions because their statements didn't match up. Dumpig was sure that Natalee and Joran were left at the beach near the Marriott Hotel in the second version of the story. After a review by the courts, the Kalpoe brothers were freed on July 4, but Vanderloot stayed in jail for another 60 days. It was July 4, 2005, and the Royal Netherlands Air Force sent F-16 jets with infrared cameras to help look for Natalee Holloway. However, they did not find her. Later, in March 2006, older photos and satellite images were compared to see if there were any changes in the landscape that could point to a burial place. A gardener in the area said he saw Joran van der Loot and the Kalpo brothers early on May 30 near the Aruba Racquet Club. A nearby pond was partly drained, but nothing was found. Another tip came from a runner who saw men hiding a blonde woman in a trash dump that had already been searched. The police searched the dump 3 more times with cadaver dogs, but they still didn't find any proof. The FBI and Aruban cops worked together on the case and looked at blonde hair on duct tape. But tests showed that Holloway's hair was not in the hair. The Kalpo brothers and Freddie Aramatsis were arrested again on August 26. Aramatsis was suspected in a separate case involving a child. Later, Dumpig stated that the arrests were meant to get the suspects to confess, but they didn't work. By September 2005, a judge had freed all the suspects and told them they had to be ready to be questioned. On September 14, all the rules were lifted. Over the next few months, Joran van der Loot did a number of interviews with the media. He said that Holloway wanted to have sex with him but couldn't because he didn't have a condom on Fox News in March 2006. He said she decided to stay on the beach. At 3 a.m., his friend Satish picked him up. Satish's lawyer, on the other hand, said Satish had gone to bed and not picked up Joran that night. Joran agreed that he lied at first, but he said it was because he thought Holloway would be caught soon. The FBI talked to Holloway's friends again in early 2006, and Aruban police did more searches near the Marriott Hotel Beach and sand dunes, but they didn't find anything. In an interview before he quit the case, Chief Gerald Dumpig said he thought Holloway might have died from drug or alcohol abuse and that her body was later hidden. He also said that Aruba lost around $3 million because of the probe. Holloway's family denied any claims that he used drugs. Natalee's father, Dave Holloway, wrote a book on April 11, 2006, about the search for his daughter and said that the Aruban government was crooked and not doing its job. What do we have left now? A lot of people think the case is over. It doesn't feel like a victory, though. It feels more like a cut that was opened up again after it had been closed up. The answer we were looking for finally came from the worst person and in the worst way. This story doesn't have a happy finish, it ends in a sad way. What did she do to die? Let us look. Based on what Joanne said, Natalee's terrible death. Natalee Holloway died in a terrible and violent way. After years of lies and half-truths, Joran van der Loot finally confessed to him in 2023. He said that he killed her on the night she went missing in Aruba in 2005. He said in his statement that he was trying to seduce her. He got angry when she said no and tried to fight him off. He then took out a cinder block and hit her in the head with it. He himself said that the blow killed her right away. What's most troubling is how planned van der Loot was, even after the fact. He said he took her body to the ocean and threw it away. That's why, despite many hunts over the years, her body was never found. He let her family suffer for almost 20 years without giving them peace while he kept making up confessions and changing his story. He even tried to take advantage of their desperation by selling false information about what happened to her. The details he gave in this last confession fit what the police had thought for years. The water is very big and harsh. Over the course of almost 20 years, the tides, currents, and marine life would have made it almost difficult to save and restore the site. To put it another way, nature has probably wiped out all physical signs of her, even though they know the truth. Many searches have been done in ponds, sand dunes, and even landfills over the years based on tips, leads, or statements. However, many of these searches turned out to be false or lead to nowhere. Cadaver dogs were brought in, ponds were drained, and satellite images were used to find broken ground. The FBI even checked hair samples and duct tape, but none of these clues led them to Natalee. Each failed search not only added to the puzzle, but it also drained the emotions of those closest to her, especially her parents, who never gave up looking for answers. Since there was no body, there was no formal or emotional closure. This case is especially sad because it was shaped not only by a terrible crime but also by years of lying. Joran van der Lut's lies and tricks put off the truth for a long time. He lied about what he did and said many times, and he even tried to get Natalee's mother to pay him money. As the story changed, people's attention moved on to something else, and detectives were left to chase ghosts. It was always hard to get to the truth. In 2023, when a trustworthy report came out, the damage was already done. There had been too much time. It's likely that time and nature had erased too many hints. It is always possible that her body could still be found, no matter how small the chance is. Maybe by a diver, washed up on the shore, or during a future digging or building job. But after all this time, most experts think that it's not likely. There aren't many chances to find bodies in the ocean again, if that's really where she was left. Not like a grave or a dump, it doesn't keep things together, it spreads them out. It's a sad truth that many families of people who went missing in the seas have to face. Still, Natalee's family may never really be able to move on from her death, and the final statement may be the closest thing they will ever get. It's something to know what happened to her, even if you can't bring her home. They were kept from getting that answer for a long time. Even though her body might never get better, the truth that has been hidden for a long time has finally come to light. And sometimes, when the actual proof is lost, the truth is the only way to get justice. Natalee did not die in a strange way. There wasn't a big plot involving many people, and there was no chance that she had survived. Someone she had just met killed her in a pointless act of violence and then lied about it for years. It took a long time and was very painful to solve the case. Concerns about the probe. People who care about the Twitty family and those who supported them were upset that they thought the investigation wasn't going anywhere. However, the Twitties got in trouble for what they did on the island. Some people said that by telling Natalee Holloway's classmates not to talk about the case and using the media to spread their own story of events, they were hiding information that could hurt her reputation. The Twitties refuted the claims. In interviews and in her book, Beth Twitty said that Joran van der Lut and the Kalpoe brothers knew more about Natalee's abduction than they told anyone. She also said that at least one of them had raped her daughter. After the Kalpoe brothers were first freed on July 5, 2005, Twitty said, "Two suspects were released yesterday who were involved in a violent crime against my daughter and I called them criminals." That same evening, there were about 200 Arubanos protesting outside of the Iranistad courthouse. They held signs that said, "Innocent until proven guilty," and, "Respect our Dutch laws or go home." After Twitty's words, Satish Kalpoe's lawyer said they would take legal action because the claims were unfair, hurtful, sexual, and completely unacceptable. Twitty said in a public statement on July 8 that her comments were based on hopelessness and anger, and she apologized to the people and government of Aruba for any hurt she caused. Loving Natalee, A Mother's Story of Hope and Faith, was written by Beth Twitty and came out in 2007. In the same year, she went on Nancy Grace and said again that she thought Joran van der Lut and the Kalpoe brothers were guilty of the crime. After a Dutch TV show hosted by Peter R. de Vries showed video recordings that linked van der Lut to the crime, she stressed the need to keep fighting for justice, saying, "If we give up, nothing will happen." Twitty insisted that the video showed exactly what happened before Natalee went missing. In an interview with the New York Post, she said she thought van der Lut might still have her daughter if she had asked for help. She said he dumped Natalee's body into the Caribbean Sea, maybe while she was still living. Twitty also said that Joran had called his dad, Pauwels van der Lut, and that dad helped plan the cover-up. The Holloway family also said that van der Lut was getting special treatment from the Aruban court system. Van der Lut was not booked again by the judge, and Twitty said, "His life is a living hell." He later added, "I'd be good with a Midnight Express prison anywhere for Joran." It was after her daughter went missing that Twitty started the International Safe Travels Foundation, a non-profit that teaches people how to journey abroad safely. She stated in May 2010 that the Natalee Holloway Resource Center would open at the National Museum of Crime and Punishment in Washington, D.C. The center, which opened on June 8, was made to help families of people who have gone missing. At first, the Holloways were against a travel ban on Aruba, but by September 2005, they had changed their minds. Beth Twitty told the public that Americans shouldn't go to Aruba or other Dutch islands because she was worried about the safety of tourists there. Alabama Governor Bob Riley and the Holloways called for a boycott at a press meeting on November 8. Riley also asked other governors in the U.S. for help, and those from Georgia and Arkansas joined in. The City Council of Philadelphia asked Pennsylvania Governor Ed Rendell to join the boycott, but he refused, and the federal government did not back the move either. Some people from Alabama's congressional delegation backed the boycott. Representative Spencer Bachus and, yes, the media played a big part in the stories, and at first, even the press did not treat Natalee fairly. News report. The news quickly became interested in Natalee Holloway's disappearance and would not let go of the story. The Alabama teen's face has been all over the news ever since she was reported missing. The story was on cable news all the time, especially in the U.S. Natalee's name kept coming up on TV for weeks or even months. What began as a neighborhood case of a missing person quickly became a big deal around the world. The case got a lot of press in part because it had all the things that the media likes to focus on. A pretty young white woman goes missing while on a trip to a tropical island for her high school graduation. The story was very interesting, and news networks relied strongly on the emotional appeal. Beth Holloway, Natalee's mother, became a well-known figure in the search. She spoke out for her daughter on shows like The Today Show, Nancy Grace, and Larry King Live. Her pain was real, and her determination to find answers made news over and over again. In Aruba, the news reporters often watched her every move in real time. A huge part of making the Holloway case a daily story was cable news, especially shows like Fox News and CNN. There were parts of shows that talked about possible suspects, motives, and ideas for hours on end, and many of them weren't based on real facts. Interviews with family, friends, and even people who had nothing to do with the case were going on all the time. The main suspect, Guerin van der Loot, became well known because of all the media attention he got. Some stories about him were so bad they were almost like tabloids, making him seem like the bad guy in a TV show. The increased attention put pressure on the Aruban government to keep the investigation going, but it also led to criticism. Many people pointed out that Holloway's case didn't get as much attention as other missing person cases, especially those involving people of color. At this point, the term missing white woman syndrome began to catch on because people noticed that the media tended to focus on young, white, middle or upper-class female victims while ignoring others. People. Officials and people who lived in Aruba also had a tough time with the media frenzy. At first, some people liked the attention because they thought it would help solve the case. But as time went on, things got worse. On the air, the government of Aruba was criticized both fairly and unfairly, and many people who live on the island thought it was being presented unfairly. Because of the bad news, there was even a drop in tourists. The media often made it seem like the local cops were corrupt or not very good at their jobs, which caused problems between U.S. media and Romanian officials. Over time, the media story changed from trying to figure out what happened to Natalee to looking at what went wrong with the investigation. New events, even small ones, were made into breaking news as soon as they happened. It was always on the front page of the newspaper whenever Guerin van der Loot said something, whether it was an admission, or reversal, or some other strange twist. The people and the media both couldn't seem to forget about the case. That person was no longer the only thing in the story. It was all over the news. Every new piece of information about the case, especially when van der Loot was caught for another murder in Peru or finally sent back to the U.S., brought it back into the public eye, even after all these years. Many TV shows, including documentaries, true crime shows, and even dramatic specials, kept Natalee's story in the public eye after it stopped being in the daily news. Streaming sites, Line, NBC, and 2020, among others, looked at the case more than once to try to figure out what really happened. At the end of the day, the Natalee Holloway case changed how the media covered news about missing people. It showed how powerful public attention can be, how bad exaggeration can be, and how cases are picked unfairly for wide coverage.